This is AJ Wachtel. Welcome to my podcast, Wachtelligence, where I discuss with my guests the past, present, and future of the local and national music scene with a focus on Boston and New England. Today's episode, Jerry Portnoy, blues, billiards, bar rooms, and being brilliant is about the iconic life and career of one of the greatest blues harp players alive today. He's even gotten harp lessons from Sonny Terry and Big Walter. For more than 5 decades, Jerry's legendary licks have been heard on stage, including being showcased in both Muddy Waters' band and Eric Clapton's bands, and on his own group, the Streamliners. Portnoy has performed in at least 28 foreign countries, over 6 different continents, and in every state in the Union, the United States, including performances at the White House, the Smithsonian, Carnegie Hall, the Royal Albert Hall in London, the Newport Jazz Festival, and many other major musical festivals around the world. He has a brand new book out, Dancing with Muddy Waters, Eric Clapton, and My Lucky Life in and Out of the Blues. And it's a great book. It's interesting, intelligent, and inspiring. And I can't wait to talk to him about his lucky and legendary life. Welcome to Wachtelligence, Jerry.
Hey, AJ, it's a pleasure to be here.
This is great. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. Before we get to one of the first things I want to talk to you about is the title. You say that your lucky life. You're a Jewish guy from Chicago. What do you mean lucky life? Do you believe in fate or predestination?
Well, I believe that you write your own movie, and wherever you find yourself, that's where you put yourself. I think you can bend reality up to 50%. If you're driven enough and focused enough and determined enough, you can make reality happen up to 50%. The other 50% is just a blind, random universe. So luck helps a lot. And I was certainly lucky, in addition to the fact that I intended to become a good blues harmonica player.
When I first heard you, I was only familiar with the Montgomery, James Cotton, Sonny Boy Williamson approach. Then I heard you, and it was night and day. I got the hair in the back of my neck to reach out when I first heard you just play one single note and bend it for a few measures. It knocked me out. For the people out there, Sonny Boy Williamson is more of a chord heavy, on the beat, as opposed to Little Walter, which is more flexible, horn-like style that, it copies the sax-led jump bands. So, there's a big difference. And when I first heard you, I can remember it like it was yesterday. The thing I really find about your book, very intelligent, very funny. When I read your book twice already, and I'm going to read it another 2 times too. It's the best autobiography of a musician I've read in many moods, maybe the best ever. So here, when you skipped a grade and you say, you mentioned that it's Planet Portnoy Population 1. Now, that's a very funny comment, a self-observation. You were a big-time Chicago White Sox fan. Why not the Cubs?
Because the first game I saw was a White Sox game. My father took me to Comiskey Park in Chicago, and I'll never forget. I think almost all young kids remember that first baseball game, because when you walk up the stairs and see that enormous green field, it's just a stunning sight. So, the White Sox at Comiskey Park in the probably the early 50s was when I saw my first baseball game and made me a White Sox fan.
And you said that Muddy was a White Sox fan too.
Yes, he was. And of course, they were on the South Side. And I lived on the north side, and of course the Cubs were a north side team. And I actually probably went to more Cubs games because they were more accessible. But the White Sox were my team, and they were a better team back then anyway.
And your first press clipping was when you won tickets to a game too, right?
Well, there was an annual series between the White Sox, what they called the City Series, between the White Sox and the Cubs, and the Chicago. I think it was the Daily News. We had there were like four papers in Chicago: the Sun Times, the Daily News, the Chicago Tribune, and I think there was another one too, the American or something. But at any rate, I think the Daily News and the big Marshall Field department store ran a contest, a citywide letter writing contest to be the bat boy for the city series between the White Sox and the Cubs. I was 11 years old, and they had a huge box in the lobby of the Marshall Field department store, and people put their entries in there. Anyway, I wrote my letter for the contest, and my mother took it down to the store, and she dropped my entry in the huge box, and there were thousands of others in there. Anyway, I won second prize, so I got a couple of tickets to the game. I got a baseball bat and two baseballs autographed by the opposing teams, but and that was okay. But I didn't get what I really wanted, because if I actually won the contest, I would have been bat boy, and I could have hung in the dugout with Minnie Minoso and Jungle Jim Rivera and Nellie Fox and all the great players from the White Sox of the 1950s.
You ditched Hebrew school religiously, you said. That's another funny comment. You mentioned that you have a cousin Rhoda. My mother's name was Rhoda. That's a real last generation name. There's not too many Rhodas around today in 2025, are there?
I have no idea, but names come in fashion and fall out of fashion.
So you were the first person on your block to have TV, and you took piano lessons. And the thing that you said that was so intelligent that I read in your book was bad music teachers have disheartened and turned off countless hopefuls. And that really hit me home, because I remember my guitar teacher when I was like 12 years old rolling his eyes when he was teaching me scales. I wanted to play Chuck Berry, not scales. Another intelligent thing that you said is black and white trampled by green. In one sentence, another keen and intelligent observation. You want to say anything about what you know about those things?
Well, as far as black and white trumped by green, that's America. Money talks. So rock and roll, the white establishment tried to step on rock and roll because it was the leading proponents were black, and so they didn't want them to succeed, and so they tried to elbow them off the playlists, but they couldn't do it. And once they realized that there was money to be made in black music, uh, all bets were off. Black and white were trumped by green, by the green dollar, the greenback.
You talk about a pool room Bensingers in Chicago had spittoons, and you met Minnesota Fats. Was he really the father of great blues singer Etta James?
That's a rumor that's gone around for a long time. I don't think there's any definitive proof of that, but that has been a rumor for a long time.
What do
And
you think?
I have no idea. I mean, it's possible. I mean, I have no idea. I wasn't in the room, so.
You write about when you enlisted in the army and were ordered around. Jesus, I realized I'm fucked. in italics. That's funny. You hate authority. When you were training with your rifle and bayonet, you choose to shout love instead of kill with each bayonet thrust. Good for you. It's a pointless protest, but it says a lot about you. What do you think about, I mean, have you changed any in your thinking? Would you still do that if you were in the army today?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was not a good candidate for becoming a mindless military automaton.
That's funny. You also talk that really knocked me out is you talk about chillums. And I'll bet I have a few old wooden chillums, and I'll bet you and I may be the only people, a handful of people that even know what that is. What an arcade 60s pipe.
Yeah, it worked pretty well.
You know, I had you talk about I also took a ferry across the straits to Gibraltar to Tangiers, and I had a finger of hash that I had bought from to bring back to Spain, and that was in the '70s. And you mentioned that the penalty was 6 years and a day if you got caught with drugs in Spain, because Franco was a dictator. What I did was I took an apple and I carved out a little bit on the top, and I put a hole into the side with a pencil, and I smoked my hash, my Moroccan hash, out of an apple, and then I ate the apple.
Yeah, eat the evidence. That's good.
I was on a B'nai B'rith tour, though, so I don't know if I was going to get tagged. You mentioned Brownie McGee drank ever-present scotch and milk. Now, what the heck is the story between drinking scotch and milk?
It sounds pretty disgusting. I thought it was disgusting at the time, but apparently, that's not an unusual drink. Uh, I've heard other people drink that.
Okay, Sonny Terry was a great blues harmonica player and the first one you ever met. You play nothing like him. What's the difference?
Oh, well, Sonny's got a really unique style. There are only a handful of people that can play his style with conviction. Really a handful. There's obviously the great Joe Falisco, Victor Puertes from Spain, Peter Madcat Ruth. There's a guy named Gary Onofrio, and those are the ones that come to mind. He's got a very kind of personal style. It's a lot of chord rhythms. Um, it's really a lot of chord rhythms. It's not as linear, let's say, as like a Little Walter style or something like that. So he's a wonderful player. I mean, he's very entertaining, but I don't play anything like him.
You said that Sonny Terry told you, Jerry, this harp takes me all over the world. If you stick to it, it'll do the same to you.
It was fantastic when he said that to me. Sonny was legally blind. He could see light and shadow, but that was about it. And I was leading him from his motel down to the club he was playing at in California. It was only about a couple blocks away. And so we're walking down the street. He was holding onto my arm, and he had a shirt with all kinds of different pockets that he had his harmonicas in, so he could tell he knew which key was in which pocket. And anyway, he just pulled one out at random and held it up and said, Jerry, this harp taking me all over the world. If you stick with it, it'll do the same for you. And that really, it was just so encouraging to me. And it was really, really satisfying. And of course, he wound up being correct, and it did take me all over the world. And it was great. And he realized that later. I did a show with him in Providence, Rhode Island, and he was really happy to see me.
What was the differences between Little Walter and Big Walter's styles?
Uh, Big Walter's strength was really his sound. And the most important thing when you're learning an instrument, I mean, the most important thing in playing an instrument really is making a beautiful sound come out of your instrument. And Walter's sound, Big Walter's sound, was really something special. Uh, he had a very subtle vibrato, like I say in the book, that kind of made his notes glow. And he had almost like this whip crack snap to the way he attacked his notes with his tongue blocking and all that. Um, he was not the improvisatory genius that Little Walter was. Little Walter also had a beautiful sound, but it was different than Big Walter's. But Little Walter was an improvisatory genius. I mean, he rarely played the same thing twice and used the entire harp and a variety of techniques, and he remains the gold standard for at least Chicago blues playing.
Can you say the same thing about yourself? Do you rarely play the same thing twice?
No, well, it depends. I mean, certain songs have signature riffs that
Right.
make the song what it is. So, certain things you play, and even with solos, sometimes there's a certain architecture or a certain thing that may kick it off. But in general, I try to just play off the top of my head now.
You mentioned Rick Estrin. How is his playing different from yours?
Uh, I don't know. I mean, everybody's playing is different just because everybody's physiology and physiognomy is different, But Rick is one of the great Sonny Boy 2 players, the second Sonny Boy. He's a master of that style. Um, and, he can play Walter's stuff too. He's a terrific harmonica player and a terrific person. He's been my best friend for over 50 years.
You mentioned that Big Walter had large hands and long, thin fingers. I met Chuck Berry, and that's the first thing I noticed about him. He had big hands and long, thin fingers, and Johnny Winter did too. Do you have big hands and long fingers?
No.
You say technology today lets you isolate a riff, loop it, and play it back at reduced speed. Will better technology make better harp players?
Well, it'll make learning harp a lot easier. I mean, when I was learning, you were learning off of the records if you wanted to learn, somebody's solo or how to play a certain song or instrumental. You put an LP on a turntable, and then you had to move the needle back, a few grooves to play the riff over and over and over and over. And it was a laborious process. And with those turntables, they usually had four speeds: 16, 33 and a third, 45, and 78, because those were the speeds that various formats played at. So if you drop the speed from 33 and a third to 16, that's approximately half. So the pitch would drop an octave, but would basically stay in tune. But anyway, you had to go through all these gyrations to try and hear the riff uh, enough times and slow enough so that you could pick out what the person was doing that you're trying, whose music you were trying to learn. Now, you can, with technology, like I say, you can isolate a riff and slow it down and loop it, and it makes learning so much easier. So the technology has made learning much, much easier.
You've developed several types of vibrato. Why is vibrato important? And tell me some of the different kinds.
Well, vibrato is kind of the signature sound of your notes. It gives a human quality to it. Uh, for instance, like singers tend, like if they sustain a note, the note will be played straight, and then they use what they call a trailing vibrato. So there's a little wave at the end of the note. And you can do that on harmonica too, or you can sustain the vibrato. And the vibrato, they have, people that have kind of different natural speeds. So some are faster than others, some are deeper. The wave is deeper than others. So yeah, I developed a few different ones, but age has taken its toll on my vibrato, to my great regret.
My baby by my side. Yeah, when the sun rose this morning, I'd have my woman by my side. Well, I didn't know what she was. She's out with another guy. Yeah, don't the sun look lonesome, shedding down behind the tree. Yeah, don't the sun look so lonesome, shedding down behind the tree. Well, don't the house look so lonesome when your baby pack up to leave. Back to me. Well, blowing, blow my baby back to me. Well, you know, if I don't soon find my pine top, my heart gonna be in misery.
You know, your sound signature is an especially rich and deep tone. Please explain.
Well, I don't know. Conceptually, I would think of the note as kind of a cylinder, and I would try and bore into the center of the note. And at any rate, when I had my deep vibrato, it just, well, I don't know how to describe sound, and I can no longer do it. So they'll have to listen to my old records. Listen to Blues in a Dream, and you'll hear that vibrato.
I spoke to Rosie Rosenblatt, Mr. Viztone from Viztone Records, and I asked him, he's also in the 11th Hour Blues Band at Danny Klein's Full House. I asked him, what's so great about Jerry Portnoy's style? And he goes, well, I could say Jerry is a great player in the classic style of Little Walter, beautiful tongue blocking tone. What's the difference between tongue blocking and puckering?
Well, with puckering, you're only covering one note at a time, so you only have control of the sound of that one note. So when you play the note, it comes across as just a single note. When you tongue block the note, you're actually playing a chord for a split second underneath the note. Before the single note is isolated, a chord sounds just before the single note isolates, and that gives a punchier sound.
You say your vibrato has made slow blues one of your strengths. How?
Well, because when you play fast tempo numbers with a lot of notes passing by very quickly, the actual sound of the note isn't such a factor. It's just the pitch of the note. But when you're playing slow blues, uh, where there are more sustained notes, where they're held for a longer period of time, and there's more ambient space around the note. There isn't a lot of clutter. So the notes are more upfront and sustained and really naked. And so you're exposed. And if the sound of that note is weak, it just doesn't have any impact. It's really the sound that moves people, that gets up in their chest and moves them emotionally. So the note itself has to carry the emotion.
You say of Paul Osher, he had it all: the tone, the time, the taste, and the attitude too. How's Paul's playing different from your own?
It's hard to say. I mean, he was a big influence on me, but Paul was just, he had something special. I don't know. You know, there are a lot of musicians. Muddy used to say, he used to listen to a musician say, I don't know if I can say this. Well, you can edit it. So Muddy used to say, the motherfucker played pretty good, but I can make a motherfucker like that with a hammer and a nail. And what that meant was that, yeah, a guy can learn how to play pretty good, but you know, if you're dedicated enough and you try hard enough and study, you can learn how to play music. But there are certain people that are gifted, that are just gifted by God, and there are things, and those musicians have qualities that you can't learn, that you can't practice, that can't be taught. You have to be born with it. And so some musicians have really a gift from God, and he was one of those. I'm a
I
hammer
talked
and nail musician.
I talked to John Paris from Johnny Winter's band, from his own band Rockola, who played harp, bass, and the second guitar for Johnny. And he told me, I'm reminded of one of Hubert Sumlin's great gigs in New York City about 100 years ago. Paul Osher was there. We were all in the dressing room and, quote, talking shop. And Jerry started to play Misty on a Marine Band harmonica. At that time, playing a jazz standard on a diatonic, not on a chromatic, was an eye opener, or should I say, ear opener. And he had that great tone and vibrato that harp players strive for. The harmonica spot in Muddy Waters' band was very coveted, so you just had to be hip to that whole, quote, alumni association. Little Walter, Junior Wells, Cotton, Osher, Portnoy. So, like a lot of musicians, I learned from Jerry, and hearing him live in recording and in caps, he writes, from his instructional material, which I also recommend. Thanks, and best, Jerry Portnoy. Looking forward to checking out the new book. And he also says, P.S., if you get the chance, AJ, ask Jerry about our mutual friend, harmonica maestro Jim Lieben.
Oh yeah, Jimmy Liban. He's kind of one of the unsung heroes of the harmonica. He's not very well known, but he's been around a long time. He was around, at the time, that I was learning Rick Estrin. He goes back to the to the 70s or maybe even late 60s. But he was based in Milwaukee, and he had a band called Short Stuff, and he was a terrific player. He had a piano player in his band for a while, Junior Brantley, who later played with the Fabulous Thunderbirds, and I believe Billy Flynn may have played with him for a while, the great Billy Flynn. But Jim's a wonderful player, singer, and a terrific songwriter as well.
You talk about your time many moons ago you spent at the Cook County Jail. You were attached to a program whose purpose was to try and reduce the recidivism rate by offering training, counseling, education, employment assistance. I mean, that just, you were now living in the black world by day at jail and by night in the bars. You say the black world was earthier and more vibrant, freer and more exuberant. People walked and talked with style, dressed with color, and laughed with gusto.
Yeah, I mean, black culture is the source of American culture, and it's really taken over the world. It's an improvisatory, exuberant culture, just full of life, and it was one of the great gifts of my life to be involved in that.
You say by day you had to maintain a certain professionalism, and at night you transformed into a looser persona.
Yeah, when I was working at the jail, I mean, not only were most of the inmates black, but the staff was black too. And of course, I kind of related to a lot of the guys that were the inmates, and they were more like the people I was hanging around with in the bars at night. But I had to put on a kind of a professional face during the day, and like
so you're somewhat of an actor too.
Well, yeah, it sometimes felt like I was passing, and as I relate in the book, I was at the jail because I had broken the law too. I got the job because I forged a college transcript to get me the job.
You joined Muddy's band with Bobby Margolin on guitar. Let me tell you what he said about you. Jerry crafts and shapes his notes deliberately and exquisitely. It's a trademark of his signature styles, always recognizable as Jerry. That's a pretty accurate description.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I take care to try and make sure that each note is properly attacked and carved and in the right place and all that. So, yeah, you have to pay attention to the details when you play music.
Well, yeah, two things we talked about that I wanted to just reissue is that your band, Muddy's bands, was now playing to larger, mostly white audiences when you joined, and you had talked about that, about how playing about blues artists playing in front of audiences before, and now they were mainly white. They were more white audiences, and your first gig with Muddy was in a baseball stadium. How cool is that? You were so influenced and so much into the White Sox. You say it was like being called up to the big leagues.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, that was, like I say, it was kind of fitting that my first gig with Muddy was in a baseball stadium because, in a sense, I'd been playing in the minor leagues, so to speak, playing in black clubs around Chicago, and then Muddy Waters, so to speak, called me up to the big leagues, and because he was the Babe Ruth of blues singers, and the Muddy Waters Blues Band was very much the equivalent of the New York Yankees, and playing harmonica in the Muddy Waters Blues Band was like playing center field for the Yankees. So it was a historic and iconic position.
You mentioned that in Muddy's band, drummer Willie Big Eyes Smith is the only known holder of the mythical Palm Tree to Palm Tree Award, driving California to Florida nonstop. Well, since the book's been written, has anyone contested you with unknown holders?
Not to my knowledge. I think Willie retired that award.
Luther Guitar Jr. Johnson was in the band. What do you think of his guitar playing?
Well, he played kind of a West Side style, a lot of single note stuff. He didn't play a lot of chords. Now, Bob Margolin knew how to play all those chords in the Jimmy Rogers style. So between the two of them, they covered a lot of territory.
Does your playing change much with different guitarists?
No. I try and have guitarists, that know how to play behind a harp. I mean, it's a special style of guitar that that you need to know if you're going to back a harmonica player. And there are certain guitar players who set the form for playing behind a harp. I mean, there would be Robert Jr. Lockwood, Lewis Myers, Eddie Taylor, Luther Tucker, and Jimmy Rogers. Those are probably the most significant guitar players to learn if you want to learn how to play behind a harmonica.
I have a quick Eddie. I have a quick Luther Guitar Jr. Johnson story that I'm sure will make you smile. Eddie Kirkland, Johnny Copeland, and Luther were in Ed Burke's one night when Luther was playing there, and I brought them all downstairs to smoke out of my cello. So Ed Burke comes walking down, and he sees us all four of us smoking weed. And this was in the 90s. It wasn't like today. This was he could have gotten his license taken away or something. So I go down there and I say, Ed, what do you think of this? 3 Grammy Award winners smoking weed in your club. And he looked at me like I had 2 heads, shook his head, and walked upstairs. But I figured you'd smirk at that story.
Yeah, I remember, the basement. That was the dressing room for Ed Burke's. It was nasty down there. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, you say back then, clubs were often multiple night engagements. Later on, they were almost all one nights. Why?
I guess just the economics of the business. I'm not sure.
Is this good or bad?
It depends how you look at it. For me, I really liked when you went into a club and you played 4 or 5 nights. That way, you didn't have to pack up and move every day, and you could get to meet a waitress.
Another thing that you say that was very funny was your mother's reaction. You say, when I told her I was playing in bands in the South and West Side, she goes, "You're playing harmonica in bands with Schwarzes?" And you say Pine Top Perkins would buy tins of meat products, heated up by running hot water over it in the sink, ground pig snouts, and other offal. He lived to be 97. And you also said Colonel Sanders and Ronald McDonald provided the rest of his diet. What do you explain that he lived to 97 eating that?
You know, uh, lifestyle is half of it and genetics is the other half. So I think the genetics played the biggest part of his longevity. It certainly wasn't his diet.
We're nearly 25 when you first picked up a harmonica, and 6 years later, you played Carnegie Hall with Muddy Waters. Again, fate or free will.
Well, the free will part of it was that, I made it happen as far as learning how to play well enough to be in the Muddy Waters band. But actually being in the Muddy Waters band was fate. Was just, I was in the right place at the right time, and I had the chops, and it just converged. But it's a combination of will and luck.
Paul's Mall in Boston. Let's talk 2 seconds about Freddie Taylor. You had Muddy's 60th birthday party there. Bobby Margolin and Duke Robillard sat in. David Maxwell was in the band that night. He told me a funny story about how Freddie King, when he played in Freddie King's band after the gig, on the bus, they'd play cards, and Freddie usually won back the money he had just paid them. And and you said Kim Wilson once said, "Singing is what makes his living. The blues is first and foremost a vocal music. Are there blues bands that just play instrumental melodies? And how is your playing different than his?"
I guess I'd just say Kim's a genius and I'm not. Kim is the gold standard now. I mean, he's the only person I would say that can stand on the same level as Little Walter. He's an improvisatory genius. He's in command of the whole instrument. His ability to create different sounds and moods and textures on the instrument is unmatched, and his dynamics are superb. He's just a wonderful, wonderful player. He's inspired not only me, but harmonica players all over the world for many, many years. And
your story about Jimmy Reed, Bright Lights, Big City, Honest I Do, a world-class drunk, locked in the shower, used a shower curtain to get alcohol is priceless. It's so funny. Funny, muddy story with Bob Dylan, where he mistakenly calls him John Dylan. You were offered a spot on his Rolling Thunder review, but you weren't about to leave Muddy for a one-shot tour with Bob Dylan. What's your favorite Bob Dylan song you think your harp would have been fun to play on?
I have no idea. I mean, obviously I have enormous respect for his songwriting talent. He's a genius in that, but I couldn't pick a song out of the air that I play on.
You say Muddy like the heavier sound of the low notes of the harp, what he called the big end. What does this mean? And can you give me an example of a tune you played with him where this can be best heard?
It's just the notes at the bottom of the harp, what he called the big end, they're just deeper and richer. As you move up the harp, the notes get a little bit thinner, and he liked the heavier sound of the lower notes.
In 1978, you moved to Boston from Montreal. Boston had a thriving blues scene with a number of clubs and a rich talent pool of musicians. What's different now?
Well, I don't think the blues scene is as heavy as it was back then. I mean, I guess they're good. I'm not that involved with the local scene anymore, so I really don't know what's going on. But I know when I first moved to Boston, there were a lot of clubs and there were a lot of terrific musicians around. Uh, I really don't know the local scene now. I don't really play it, and I live on Cape Cod, and I tend to be a homebody now.
Well, I spoke to one of your old students, Annie Raines, who plays harp for Paul Rochelle and her husband. Very talented woman, and this is what she said: Jerry mastery of the blues harmonica is both skillful and stylistic. He has studied and absorbed the canon of tone, rhythm, vibrato, dynamics, intonation, and a suitcase full of expressive techniques, and most importantly, put himself into the mix with a signature sense of time and space, the most essential ingredients that elevate the merely good to the great. And she had a story. When I was barely 18, I took my first harmonica lesson from Jerry, my hero, who showed me how to tongue block on the harmonica. I wanted to sound just like Jerry, so I struggled and worked to switch over from punker style playing to tongue blocking. A couple of years later, I ran into Jerry and he told me, I've rediscovered puckering and I was crestfallen. I have another. She goes. I have another funny story, but I can't print it. Ha ha. So, what do you have to say about that?
That's interesting because most players begin by puckering, and then if they're fortunate, they learn about tongue blocking and learn how to do that technique. I started like most people puckering, and then I learned tongue blocking, and I tongue blocked everything for I don't know 10 years or so, and then at some point I realized that I needed to pucker certain things in order to produce certain sounds, triple tonguing and all that. So I had to kind of relearn that, and then eventually I became fluent both ways, and so now I use both techniques and just switch back and forth without thinking about them.
I spoke to another local talent, great local talent, Sax Gordon Beadle, and he's famous in Europe. And he played with all the major artists in Boston: Junior Wells, Charlie Musselwhite, Cotton, Little Milton, Pine Top Perkins, Duke Robillard, Mac Guitar Murphy, Luther Guitar Junior Johnson. He goes, I really don't know Jerry too well, but we've only done a gig or two together, but he's always been very cool and encouraging. Of course, he's known for playing classic Chicago blues harp with Muddy Waters. So it's interesting to me when we worked on his album Down in the Mood Room that the music he wanted to do encompassed a much bigger range, including jazz songs like Canadian Sunset, Lullaby of Birdland, and old R&B like Sax's Syl Austin's Goes So Slow. But in a way that's just like Chicago blues harmonica hero Little Walter, who was obviously listening to different sounds and interpreting them into his own style, like covering the Buddy Johnson Orchestra's I'm Just Your Fool. Bravo, Jerry. What do you think about that?
Well, that's nice. I mean, I when I cut the album Down in the Mood Room, that was my purpose, was really to play a few things that that laid well for the harp. I mean, I picked certain either jazz songs or, you know, things outside of the classic Chicago blues vein. I picked songs that I thought laid well for the harmonica, and you know, so that the harmonica could do a good version of those. And so, you know, I mean, in my sets, I played Misty, and on that album, I played Canadian Sunset and Lullaby of Birdland, Stormy Weather, and a great and one of the ones I really like, which is the first tune on the album. It's an old Horace Silver jazz tune called "Doodlin'," and so yeah, I mean, I think if the harmonica is a quirky instrument, and so certain things lay well for it, and certain things don't. So I try and pick music that lays well for the harmonica, and those tunes seem to do it.
Funny story that I remember about you living on Cape Cod. About 20, 25, 30 years ago, I was on a bus and you were on a bus going to New York City from Boston. And I ran into you. You were sitting across the aisle, one seat in front of me. I go, Jerry, you're in Eric Clapton's band. Why are you still living in Cape Cod? And you laughed at me and said, the seafood. I love the seafood. So, I mean, is that fair to say that that's one of the reasons you're still on Cape Cod?
Well, it doesn't hurt. I mean, I do like seafood, and the seafood on Cape Cod is great, but it also helps that that my wife owns the house. So I've got a roof over my head. Otherwise, I'd be living in a cardboard box.
Great Keith Richards story, funny story. You took a big snort, and then he took a big snort and just brushed his hands together to dust off the excess. And the process wasted more cocaine than I had ever done in my life up to then. That's funny. That's a funny story. You seem to be a man driven to excess. What saved you?
I'll tell you, I always had a red line. I mean, I did everything and tried everything, but there was always a red line, and there were certain things you know, that I was not going to cross that line. One of which was sticking a needle in my arm. I never did that, you know. So I could maybe go up to the line, but no further. So I was never. I didn't have a self-destructive streak. I always had you know, a certain amount of good sense that I kept.
Many moons ago, Roy Buchanan, who I was pretty close to for the last 10 years of his life, comes to Boston, and a friend of mine dumped out a gram of coke, and he split 3 small lines, and he put the majority of the cocaine, the gram, to the side, and he hands it to Roy. Roy snorted the big 3/4 of the gram. Right? Me and the guy I was with just looked at each other, didn't say a word. Then he went on stage and played a crippling set. Just wild. All right. Now, you had dinner with Clapton on his train. Just the two of you. Herman Goring's personal car. He was head of the Luftwaffe. Is that fate or free will? That there you are. And you said Eric introduced you to George Harrison, and you snorted a line with him. Now that's impressive. You
Well,
said you would even drink.
You're easily impressed.
You played with Eric Clapton from 1993 to 1996. Are you still in touch with him?
No.
You say many like Muddy had painstakingly learned to draw their names. It wasn't even in the consciousness of white kids that people would not know how to read or write. I was good friends with James Cotton for decades, and when I first learned he couldn't read or write, I was stunned. Exactly like you said, it was inconceivable to me that my friend couldn't read or write. He did learn how to draw his name. I still think that a lot of people just don't even realize, how different the black world was than the white world.
Well, for guys that, were raised down south and, were put out in the fields when they were kids, that was their function, to pull cotton out of the ground, not to go to school.
You recorded with Bill Wyman, the bassist of the Stones. You recorded a Little Walter tune, Too Late, for his Any Way the Wind Blows album. Did you meet his wife and his son's wife?
No.
This is a question that I ask every guest on my show. What was the first concert that you ever attended in the audience?
Muddy Waters at Orchestra Hall in Chicago around 1961, maybe. No, let's see. Yeah, sometime around there, 1962, maybe. Yeah, Muddy Waters at Orchestra Hall in Chicago. So that's kind of odd because I wound up in his band about 15 years later. Yeah.
Fate or fiction?
Yeah, one or the
Fate
other.
or free will, Yeah. All right, buddy. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
To order Jerry's book, Dancing with Muddy Waters, Eric Clapton, and My Lucky Life in and Out of the Blues, go online to Amazon or any of the other booksellers, or you can go directly to jerryportnoy.com. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Wachtelligence. You can connect with me on Facebook at Wachtelligence. Thanks to my producers, my son Harrison and David Schwartz, and Harvey Brooks for my theme song. Don't forget to subscribe.
I don't care what you think of me. Don't need no jailer to set me free. Don't want strangers filling up my cup. Don't need no advisor to show me down from up.